Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to this week's installment of Mark and Mark in the Midday. Today we have a great guest with us. We have Lou Klimchuk, who forged together a great major league career that lasted about a dozen years. And quite honestly, I was going to talk to him about his major league career, but after doing so much research and talking to Mark and talking to Lou before we started the show, I find that the things that he's doing now for former players, working with BAT, working with the Phoenix, the Arizona alumni for former major league players, is even more impressive. So I'm going to say welcome to Lou, and also say my cohort and partner Mark Littell is with us, and he's going to talk to us about what Lou and him are doing as well. So good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Lou, we're really glad to have you. And I've been with Lou in Arizona he got a hold of me, and he set me into some things and just opened my eyes about what baseball outside of baseball was doing after the game is over. And Lou is head of the Major League Baseball Players Alumni in Arizona. And I think, Lou, you said at the moment now we have, around 450 members. Lou, by the way, is the director of this.
Yep, exactly. Uh-huh. Okay. Basically, when I got Mark involved and so many other guys, when they're through with baseball, we always went back to our home. And that's how we got involved, through the Major League Alumni Association out of Colorado Springs. And, you go back to your community, you get a job, and other than your neighbors and your family, nobody knows who you are or what you're doing. So this all started about 31 years ago, where we did get involved with the community, with fundraisers for various charities, Boys and Girls Club, leukemia, just so on and so forth. And right now, our charity is Arizona Youth Baseball, which means all of the dollars that we use or raise now goes to the development of youth baseball by doing clinics, camps, and a lot of other things that we do here in the Valley. So we're very active. And as I said earlier, we've got 400 and some guys on that mailing list. But 90 to 100 and some, they're very active and very willing to participate in some of the things that we want to do.
Now, Lou, we're going to switch gears here. We're going to go backwards here and put it in reverse. And
okay,
Lou played baseball for quite a while. You had 13 different seasons, I know, with different teams, and you just played a long time. And you were a middle infielder mainly, and you were up and down and sideways, and you got to see a lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of good pitching, a lot of good managers. And you've got stories probably from, I don't know where you can get all these stories from, but I'm sure you could just keep talking. But what was your first year? What was your first year, Lou, playing? When did you start?
My first year was 1957, and I signed with the Kansas City A's. And if you guys can remember that far back, you probably weren't even born, Mark. But anyhow, 1957, they didn't have a draft back then. The only draft that they had was the military draft. Okay? But anyhow,
you wanted to avoid that one.
I did until 1962, and then that's when I joined the reserves. So I was in the reserves for about 6.5 years, which was that requirement at the time. But I was very fortunate in my career. Went through a rookie league season and tore up the knee real quick, and it didn't bother me that much because the next year when I was 18, and if you guys will remember also, that's when the classifications they had was D, C, B, A, AA, AA. So I was playing in a C league, hitting about 390, and Kansas City called me to the big leagues at the age of 18. So I got to the big leagues real early, which was good and bad. I didn't have to ride the buses anymore. But my career was after that was a journeyman career. A lot of ups and downs, fill in for this guy, fill in for that guy. But I was fortunate in the 12 years to become a vested member in the pension plan and all those good things. So I have a lot to be thankful for from baseball.
Well, Lou, you brought up a good thing about when you came up at the young age of 18 or 19, which is, did you know that you and Stover McElwain are the only example of a teenager giving up a home run to a teenager in Major League Baseball history?
Yeah, it took me. I think I realized that about 8 or 10 years ago. Somebody sent me that article, and
Really?
that home run. Yeah, I didn't know that at the time. But here's another one for you guys, Mark and Mark. And I just found this out about 4 years ago. That same home run, that same home run that I hit. I am the youngest guy in the history of baseball to lead off a game with a home run.
Oh my gosh.
Justin Profar he was with the Rangers, and he hit one. And in the news release, it said he was now the fourth youngest guy to lead off a game with a hitter. The youngest guy was myself. And the other guys, there was a couple other notables in there. A guy by the name of Mantle was one of the younger ones. And
I've heard
Bob
of him.
Kennedy. You heard of him. Bob Kennedy and a few guys. Yeah. So my claim to fame is my first major league hit. It's in the record books, i.e. whoever cares. But more importantly, I led off 2 times in the big leagues, and that was in 1958, the last 2 games of the season.
Well,
okay,
you're a minor league legend, though, because you've won MVP awards in the minors twice. People still today talk about the season that you had in Shreveport in 1959, where you banged out 19 homers. I mean, people in Shreveport that I talk to through Facebook talk about that season that you had, which was fantastic.
Yes, it was. And again, that was kind of the progression, as far as development is concerned, to go from a C League to a AA. And that's where you're going to see the veteran pitchers and see how you can handle it. And I think I hit about 315 that year, with the 19 home runs and a lot of RBIs. And then I was fortunate enough to, again, get that call up, to Kansas City at the end of the season, finished out that year. And I think I hit 4 or 5 home runs up there for them, too.
What was it like playing in Kansas City back then? Because the KCAs were not like the KC Royals that my partner over here played for. They were not contenders in any way, shape, or form every year. How was that to play in that type of environment?
Well, a couple of things on that. Prior to Kansas City getting awarded the franchise from the A's, from the Philadelphia A's, they were the farm club of the New York Yankees. So the first 4 or 5 years for the first 4 or 5 years that they were Kansas City A's, American League, they were trading so much back and forth, that they still thought that they were the farm club. And what we would do, like when I got there, we had guys like Hank Bauer, Don Larson, Art Ditmar. These are the guys that were the Yankees a couple of years before. Then we traded guys like Ralph Terry and Roger Maris over there to those teams. Yeah. So, kind of interesting. And I guess I just laugh at myself. How didn't I get caught up in one of those trades?
I was going to ask you, was that the mindset of the players back then? Were you guys thinking, hey, we're playing for the A's, we're just auditioning to get to the Bronx?
Hey, yeah, humorously, yeah, but I think wishful thinking also, yes. Yeah, let's face it. Do you want to finish 29 or 30 games out, or do you want to be fighting for a pennant every year?
For sure. I mean,
that's what it amounted to. Yeah, but
here's a question.
Yeah.
Look, I got a really good question for you, but you got to educate me and Mark on this. And I don't know, but when you came up at 18 years old, did they use planes or trains or both?
Both.
In the big league.
Both. The first my first call up was from Pocatello, Idaho to Boston.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's the only time that I was on a train with a club. And primarily after we finished up playing in Boston, we took a train to New York because we were going down to Yankee Stadium. Now here's a scary thing when you're on that train. The ball game's over, everybody's on the train, a lot of commotion, and you got, 35, 40 people in the group. So the next morning I wake up, out of the sleeper, and there's nobody around. I had no clue because you're in the holding yard out there. So fortunately there was one or two guys there, and they said, "Hey, Rook, come on with us. We're going to the hotel." So it worked out all right. But that's
a little rookie.
So I did get that experience of the train one time. Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. So at least they didn't leave you on the plane. So,
yeah.
But that's a good one. But no, I know. Good.
But that Kansas City club, we talked about Maris and guys like Bob Serve, Jerry Lumpy. We had them all over there that were good ball players. And, it was I don't want to call it a waiting pattern, but when things got going good, it just seemed like, hey, they're going up to New York then. So it was kind of interesting. Great experience meeting all of those guys, and it kind of opened some doors for me after it was all over, because through guys like Larson, which I still communicate with, he lives up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He introduced me, to the Bowers and the Mantles, all the big boys. So he had an idea, or he had some relationship with these guys.
Yeah. Well,
excellent. So you kind of segued. Eventually, the KC thing didn't work itself out, and for a lot of regular playing time, and you moved onto the Milwaukee franchise, the Braves. They were actually another franchise that was in flux because they had such great initial success in Milwaukee, and by the time you got to them in the early to mid '60s, there were rumors that they were going to be moving somewhere, specifically Atlanta. So that must have been different getting to Milwaukee because they were contenders.
Yeah, yes, they were, and I was getting there. And again, so many of us guys that are journeymen, it's kind of boring if you're a Robin Yount or another friend of ours and a George Brett. They played on the same team, all the time. Hell, they didn't get to meet a lot of ball players. See, when you play on 5 or 6 teams like myself, I got to meet a lot of different ball players. Like we talked about Maris and all that Yankee contingent. Then when I got over there with the Braves, then you had the Spawn, Burdette,
that Aaron
guy in right field, that Aaron fella in right field, and Eddie Matthews.
That guy third base, that what was his name? That Eddie something or other.
Yeah, you got it. But anyhow, I was always the 25th man on the 25-man squad, so I got a pretty good chance to watch a lot of good ball players play.
I got a question to ask you though about that.
Yeah.
What was it like that final season in '65 in Milwaukee? Because the year before they were supposed to move, but then there was a court injunction that kept them there one extra year. The attendance was kind of low, and I guess it affected the team. How did that affect the ball players? Did everyone just act as professional and go on with their business?
Everybody pretty much acted as professionals, except our poor manager Bobby Braga, because the front office and everybody was gone. The owners were gone. They were already living in Atlanta, and every time he walked out to the mound, and I think about halfway through the season, he wouldn't even go out there anymore. The pitching coach went out there and took the burden of all the booze. But the people of Milwaukee were so disappointed, so hurt. And here's where I was rooming or staying in the same hotel complex as Woody Woodward, who eventually was the general manager of the big leagues, and Frank Bowling. And Frank was very good friends with Bud Selig, who eventually ended up being the commissioner. And I can remember several times having breakfast, and Bud says, "I'm going to have a team here. I don't know when," because he was a car dealer at the time, and he used to give cars to all the guys to use during the summer. But he knew back in '65 that he was going to have a team. It was just a matter of the time opening, and then that all developed in the '69-'70 season. When they got the pilots over there.
Well, the truth is, you actually got to Atlanta. I was going to say, the truth is you actually got to Atlanta before the Braves did, because you played for the Atlanta minor league team in '65.
Yeah, I think that's another one of my claims to fame. With the Brave organization, I played in the lame duck. They call it the lame duck year. I think I got sent out sometime in the middle of August, so I played about the last month and a half, down there in Atlanta. So I played the last year in Milwaukee as a major league player, and then last year in Atlanta as a AAA player. With that, and a couple of bucks, that'll get you a cup of coffee someplace.
Or get you on our show to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lou, when you get over to Cleveland, I know you wear your Cleveland uniform all the time when we do the clinics and things of that nature. Hey, what did you like about Cleveland? Because I know you push them a lot. You push Cleveland.
Well, like most ball players, what is your favorite town? I guess it's the town that you did the best in. And my career up until 1969 was pinch hit, fill in. I got a couple of chances to play, but not a whole lot. But for some reason, developed a good relationship with Alvin Dark. And Alvin just put me in the lineup, and I think I got in about close to 100 games, in 1969. and he gave me the opportunity to play, which in my mind, I knew I could hit major league hitting because I think I ended up hitting about 287, 90-some ball games. So
Who were some of the better pitchers you faced back then?
Back for our team then?
Well, your team and the opposing team that you faced, I know. Because I know you've seen a lot.
That Indian team had a pretty good ball club as far as pitching. Tiant was there. Sam McDowell was there. Steve Hargan had a big day for us. Stan Williams came back into his own after his serious injuries, and he had a big year for us. So we had a pretty good pitching staff. Kenny Harrelson got traded to the Red Sox over there. We had Max Alvis. Max Alvis played third, and Jose Cardinal had a big year for us. But Alvin, I can really thank him, for giving me the opportunity, to play every day. So it's nice. It's nice to know when you're a 12-year major league career. It's nice to wake up in the morning and you read the newspaper and you see a right-hander's pitching. You know you're going to play. versus going to the ballpark and seeing that lineup card and you say, "Oh crap, I'm not in there again." So
who's some of the better pitchers that you faced, Lou? Who's some of those better pitchers?
Well, American League at that time, the Twins had a guy. Right-handed pitcher. Boy, here goes my memory bank. Pedro Ramos did a real good job. The Yankees had Whitey. He never hit off of Whitey, but Stan Bonson was over there. He was Rookie of the Year. That's one of my good stories. I got to tell you this. When I played in 1966, when I was finishing up, I was with the Mets, and I was on the AAA team. I faced Stan 4 times, and he was pitching for Toledo. And I didn't strike out that much. I was pretty much a contact hitter. He struck me out 3 times in one game. And I looked at myself and said, what the heck is going on? And anyhow, fast forward this to 1969, Dark puts me into a ball game and Stan's pitching. And I hit a home run off of him at Yankee Stadium. Okay? Ooh. Now, so the next year, in 1970, I get another ball game against the Yankees. And Bonson's pitching again. And I hit a home run off of him, too. I had 2 home runs in Yankee Stadium, and both of them off of Stan Bonson. Yeah.
And Stan was a pretty darn good pitcher in that day. The Yankees had a good rotation. They had Bonson, Fritz Peterson, and Mel Stottlemyre.
Yeah, and Boughton was just finishing up, too, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think at that point, Boughton was writing books over in Seattle or something like that.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, Bonson, did you ever get a third at bat against Bonson where he stuck one on your ear yet?
No, but we communicate on a couple of marketing things, and we just never bring that up, okay? Speaking of that.
Hey, Lou, I wanted to ask you a question about one of your teammates on that 69 or that era of teams in Cleveland, a young star named Tony Horton. What can you tell us about Tony? Because obviously he looked like he had the path to superstardom at that point.
Yeah, Tony, unfortunately, his career was cut short, and he could hit, but Tony didn't take the time, I don't know how to phrase this properly. He didn't know how to relax after a game. You play that ball game, which you obviously know there's so much pressure on it. Well, Tony would go right back to the room, document everything, stand in front of the mirror, work that stance and all that kind of stuff. And if it's a 162-game schedule and you're doing that every day. So basically he just got very depressed and he had a nervous breakdown is what happened to him. And he basically just called it a career. But he could hit. And then the other thing, and that I can recall, when he was in Boston, that's where he came from to the A's. There was another guy in Boston who was a pretty good friend of mine from the A's organization that came over there, and that was the Hawk Harrelson. If you guys remember the 68-69 season, the Hawks were the greatest thing since sliced bread up there in Boston. And
That's right.
Got traded, and Tony came to us, and Tony always felt that he was in Harrelson's shadows. And then when Harrelson came to Cleveland, kind of added to that again. So that might have got or influenced or another reason for the depression. But even with his depression, he was still a 290 hitter and hitting home runs.
Wow. Were you there on that day in July of 1970 when Steve Hamilton threw him the Folly floater and he crawled back to the dugout?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I was in the dugout that day watching. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. Steve Hamilton, boy, that's another name out of the past. Yeah. Another guy you talk about, the Royals, a pretty good friend of mine, coming up through the Kansas City chain, was Dick Hauser. Hauser and I, we played in the rookie. We never played on the same team during the summer, but they used to have the instructional leagues down in Florida. So we played together and roomed together down there quite a bit. And then in '61, which was Dick's first year in the big leagues, we roomed together in Kansas City. And Dick, how caustic and quick he was. He was funny. Spring training story. Dick Williams was a salty veteran, one of our everyday players with Kansas City. And Hauser picked up Williams' bat one day and broke it. And Williams got all over his ass. And Hauser said, "Hey, don't worry about it. You're not going to be using it this year anyhow."
That's a good one.
Hey, the other interesting thing when you talk about, Kansas City, we didn't win many ball games, but on the teams that I played for the 3 or 4 years, we talked about managers. You got Hauser,
Williams,
Dick Williams, you had Whitey Herzog, and you had Haywood Sullivan. So we didn't win many ball games, but they knew how to talk a good game and did very well as managers.
Water was good.
Did you get the feeling that those guys could be managers back then? I mean, you always hear people say, "Yeah, I knew that guy back then was going to be a leader or a manager. He saw the game differently than other people." Did you know that with those three guys?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the reasons I can say that, Don Hefner, he was our third base coach, and he really helped me. My first couple of years in professional baseball at the major league level, and all four of these guys, they used to get on Hefner. And not Harry Kraft too much because he's a manager, and you didn't want to rag on the manager too much. But they used to get on him all the time about coaching and managing. And Hefner would come back and say, "Yeah, let me see the days that you guys managed." And I'll be damned if all four of them did end up managing in the big league.
Hey, Lou, you got some DNA in your family here. You've got your grandson's playing with the Blue Jays organization.
Yeah.
He was the number 1 pick in 2012 as Mitch Ney. I remember Mitch quite well because he was at Hamilton High School and I lived in Phoenix, and so I got to see Mitch play, and he grew into a 6'3" stud. So,
I wish I'd had some of that size, but Mitch was the 58th pick, basically a supplemental first round pick in 2012. So he's been out there. This is his 5th year. But unfortunately, he really has had some nasty injuries. He had to miss 2 full seasons. He had a staph infection in his knee, and it required 3 surgeries. And again, nothing against our medical industry, but it took 3 surgeries to find out, hey, there's nothing wrong with the knee. He's got a staph infection. So basically, when you go a month and a half or 2, that whole right leg deteriorated to nothing. And so he had to go from scratch to build that back leg up, and they finally got it to the point where he was ready to play, and I think it was June of this year. So he's got in about 60 ball games thus far, and he's playing now, physically able, and I can't wait till we get home because I'm going to wear his buns out doing batting practice to him.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, Mark. Mark, you don't know this. Yeah, Mark, you don't know this. Lou's, I'm going to tell his age. He's 77 years old. He looks like he's 57. He acts like he's 37, and he still throws batting practice perfectly. So he said, I know he's going to wear his butt out because his grandpa could probably kick his butt because he's meaner. So anyway. And so I know that Mitch is going to actually see a lot of balls thrown in the strike zone to what he can perfect.
And again, not to belabor Mitch's situation, but the guy's going to play a lot of baseball. I've never missed 2 full seasons of organized play during the summer. And to me, just as important is what you do in that off season. So he's missed all of that off season too. So I don't know if he can catch up, but we're going to give it a whirl as far as him catching up. And you get so many ideas when you're laying in a bed trying to recuperate and whatever. And he's tried all of those ideas. I think right now he's at about 225, but he has hit about 9 home runs, so the power is still there. He's hit some right major. So the important thing, and this is what Toronto wasn't, I really got to pat Toronto on the back because they basically saw him through this rehab thing, which has worked out fine. But even playing now, what they do is play him 3 days, 1 off. Now they got him playing 4 days and 1 off. So by the time next spring training comes, they're going to say, hey, bud, go out there and play. If you can play, we'll keep you. If you can't play, see you later.
Yeah.
It's cold world, isn't it, Mark and Mark?
Yeah. Baseball's can give you rude awakenings. It is
Yeah.
Well, it's a real business now. I mean, it was a business then, but we all enjoyed playing the game. I know back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s, it seems like it's switched over to another subject, which we don't want to get into, but I tell you, it's pretty amazing, Lou, the people that you've been around in the industry of baseball and what you're doing now for the alumni and for BAT. And I always thought BAT was out of New York. I just found out it was out of Colorado Springs. The Major League Alumni Association is out of Colorado Springs, but the baseball assistance team is out of the commissioner's office in New York. And what we did, Mark, probably about 20 years ago, sometimes I talk and people don't hear me. But, to me, I look at all these national organizations, so much bureaucratic things, and, they don't bring a whole lot to the table, but they want a lot in return. So we initially told the guys at the Major League Alumni Association, hey, we're going to form our own corporation. We're going to be our own 501c3. Then if I want to do something with somebody, I'll just shake their hands and say, hey, let's do it. See, when I wanted to do something with the national guys, I had to submit it, make out a report, a presentation to them, and then it would go to the board of directors. And 3 months later, they get back to me. And in a small town like Phoenix, you can't operate that way. So it's worked out very well for us. We do support what they do. We get involved in all of their activities, but we have our own autonomy in the sense of doing our own thing, without having to answer to anybody other than my wife. Okay.
The ultimate boss.
I can tell you this, Mark, that Lou has gotten me into some things that I purely was eye-opening. I know we've gone up. I've probably been up to the Farmington with the Connie Mack World Series, but we were really up there on the Navajo Reservation doing some clinics up there. I think I've gone 4 years to that in different years, and was down in Yuma with him doing some things with Lou and the guys. And there's usually 4 or 5 guys on the trip, and it's a really good thing. You're second chance type of situations for the kids.
Yeah, the program Mark's talking about is Arizona Public Service. That's a utility company. We have a working relationship with them, and they'll do about 15 or 16 clinics in the selected areas, be it Farmington, be it Yuma. And what we'll do is we'll go up there and put on a 3-hour clinic. The clinics that we do in these kind of situations, it's more life skills, attitude, going to school, brain power, staying away from some of the bad habits out there. And a couple other big league guys that you'll remember from your old Yankee days, MARC, Mark. Ron Davis does a lot of stuff with us.
Yep, definitely know Ron Davis, the setup man for Goose Gossage and the dad of a former Met, Ike.
Ike Davis, right. And then secondly, Kenny Phelps. Kenny Phelps was a Yankee for a while, and I guess he was part of the infamous Jay Buhner trade.
How could you trade Jay Buhner?
He gets a lot of mentions on Seinfeld, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But again, Kenny works with APS, but then I coordinate getting the players, paying the players, and taking care of all the administrative things of it. So that's a good program for us. Keeps the guys involved. And I mentioned Davis, and I think, Mark, you had Dave Hilton on the show one time. And
we did.
Dave was a great instructor and communicator too. So these are the guys, that pretty much do the clinic. Yeah. Another organization, Mark, you talked about some of the, the SABR, Society of Baseball Research.
Yes.
We work real closely with those guys too, when they do their fundraisers, and they have their regional meeting here, and their home office now is in Arizona too. So when they do some things, it's a good group.
I like those guys because they pay so much attention to not just the guys who are the known name superstars, but they pay attention to the guys who maybe had the cups of coffee here and there, the interesting stories, or the guys who, might have been the first guy off the bench or something like that. They give everyone some really good promo and equal treatment.
Yes,
Some depth. The
go
ahead, Mark.
Oh, the one thing that I've noticed about Sabre was when you asked me over to that little get together they had over at Don and Charlie's in Phoenix, and there was probably 60, 75 Sabre members in there.
Right.
Most teams seem to me to be sports writers or in the industry of sport, men and women alike. But when I wrote my book on the eighth day God made baseball, that was the one thing. And I don't mention my book very much on the show because we're here for Lou. But the one thing I said when I met these Sabre people is I said, I better get my names right and my dates right, or otherwise they're going to engulf me.
They will crucify you if you don't know your names and dates.
Exactly. That was the one thing that was always on my mind. Was that spelled right? We double check that, and was that date right?
Those guys can tell you what you had for coffee. In fact, they're the ones that alerted me that I was the youngest guy to, hit a home run off a teenager. So yeah, they're out there. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, Lou, I got a quick question for you. Did you do a lot of work back in the day with Don Newcomb? Because I know he did a lot of assistance work too for the Dodgers and stuff like that.
No, our paths crossed once or twice, but no. He basically was out of New York and really was one of the, higher level guys, working with Bat. And, my basic relationship with Bat was pretty much Arizona, and helping our guys out there locally. I worked with
So you definitely worked with Joe. So you worked with Joe Garagiola a lot then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then Sam McDowell, because I think Sam took over a lot of those, as we call it, the due diligence things that we have to do, before you award the grants. So Sam and I used to communicate quite a bit.
Sam has a pretty incredible story about how he kind of righted his ship too, right?
He what?
He has an incredible story about how, he picked himself up and fixed everything in his life.
Yeah. Yeah. He had some rough time. He had some rough times in there. I never heard about it, when he was with us with the Indians. Although when I talked to some of my old teammates, they said it was there when he was with the Indians too. When he got traded to the Giants and he went over there, I guess, he really come off the deep end as far as, the drinking is concerned. Yeah. But the fortunate thing, he came out of it okay, and now he was at a source to help so many other guys out. And in some of my communications with him, I think we had about 2 or 3 guys that had that drinking problem here. And he just told me, Lou, we can't give them any money until they go, into a rehab center. So my job was to tell them, hey, you guys got to go to a rehab center before they're going to help you out. It's not going to cost you anything, but they want to get you straightened out before. Because if you give, and this, Mark can tell as well as I do, you give ball players money, what are they going to do? They're not going to go to a rehab center. They're going to go to the racetrack. I didn't say that.
That's about right. That's about right.
But
hey,
that does a good job of screening, doing due diligence. They just don't give the money away. They make sure that it's needed.
Lou, of all the people that you've worked with and obviously helped over the course of years in your post-playing years, could you tell us like one of the most incredible stories or, of somebody that you worked with, a former player who you helped get back on the straight and narrow and really get their life going straight? Because those are great stories to hear and very uplifting.
Let me pick out one here. I'm not going to give any names, obviously, because, once.
Yeah, I was going to say, we probably want to protect and keep them anonymous, but we just want to hear the story itself.
Okay. There was a young guy, let's see, he probably had to be late 40s, early 50s, and we were doing camps and clinics together. Well, anyhow, camps and clinics, you make a couple of bucks, but you don't make enough to feed your family or whatever. But anyhow, he lost his, he couldn't afford to do his health premium. Okay? So he told me, and I said, well, in my communications with that, they would rather pay the health premiums for somebody for a period of time than pay those hospital bills. So that put everything in perspective to me. So I explained to him who Bat was and whatever. And Bat did a due diligence on him, and they paid his health premiums for 6 months, while he was getting on the ground. And then I think they gave him another 6 months. So a full year, he knew he had those benefits and he was still making enough money, I guess, for the rent and those kind of things. But in the meantime, he's still doing these clinics with me, and he did have some pretty good relationships with some of the teams. Because he's a 4.5, 5 year guy in the big leagues, which means he's getting a pension. But anyhow, make a long story short, he went back into professional baseball and was a pitching roving instructor for various teams. He put 20 years in professional baseball, and then I think he got about 2 more years in the major leagues. So right now he's probably in his early 60s, and he's got his path, and everything's going right for him now. So that's
Excellent.
one situation. Yeah. But that's
Great story. Great story.
Yeah, and there's so many of them out there. One guy we had didn't win a whole lot. I talked to his widow, who's still living. This guy pitched in the early 50s with the Philadelphia Phillies. But anyhow, he needed money because they were living on Social Security, and they got hit up with some medical bills. And I think Bat gave him a grant, of about $7,000 just to get those medical things off. Then he had a positive cash flow. So those are the kind of things they do. Bat is good in the sense that it's not a freight check the rest of your life. They'll see you over some bumps and bruises, and they'll stay with you, and then just review the case. And if you need it, they're going to help you. I had one this summer. Basically the same thing. A guy pitched for the Cubs in he was 92, so he pitched for the Cubs in the late 40s. He just had about a year in the big leagues. But anyhow, he had his own place, he and his wife, and she's dementia. So they didn't have anybody that could clean the house, the yard, and whatever. So Bat awarded them, $1,000 a month, for X amount of time to pay those utility bills. Utility bills, have somebody clean the house, clean the yard, etc. And then unfortunately the gentleman passed away last year. So, but again, at least he had some quality of life, and that's what Bat wants. Give you some quality of life.
Yeah.
Good organization.
Fantastic. So I'm going to throw it over to the closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Loser, I'm the closer on this thing, and here's how the closing situation goes. You throw peas at the knees, no pies in the eyes, no wall balls, and you'll be just fine. So have a good day, folks.
You got it. Hey, Bye. Thank you guys. Enjoyed it.